September 8th, 1904, Volume 6. Discouragement kills souls more than all other vices. Courage revives the soul and is the most praiseworthy act that she can do. Continuing in my usual state, my adorable Jesus was not coming. After I struggled very much, I was feeling all discouraged, and I greatly feared that for that morning he would not come at all. Then, as he later came for just a little, he told me, "My daughter, don't you know that discouragement kills souls more than all other vices? Therefore courage, courage, because just as discouragement kills, courage revives, and is the most praiseworthy act that the soul can do, because while feeling discouraged, from that very discouragement she plucks up courage, undoes herself, and hopes. And by undoing herself, she already finds herself redone in God." September 8th, 1905, Volume 6. True charity is to do good to one's neighbor because he is an image of God. As I was in my usual state, blessed Jesus came for just a little and told me, "My daughter, true charity is when in doing good to his neighbor, one does it because he is my image. All the charity that goes out of this sphere cannot be called charity. If the soul wants the merit of charity, she must never go out of this sphere of looking at my image in everything. It is so true that true charity consists in this, that my very charity never goes out of this sphere. I only love the creature because she is my image, and if by sin she disforms this image of mine, I no longer feel like loving her. On the contrary, I abhor her, and I only preserve plants and animals because they serve my images, and the creature must modify all of herself on the example of her Creator." September 8th, 1916, Volume 11. For as long as the soul is in the divine will, so much of divine life can she say she lives on earth. The acts in the divine will are the simplest acts, but because they are simple, they communicate themselves to all. This morning after communion, I felt that my lovable Jesus absorbed me completely in his will in a special way, and I swam inside of it. But who can say what I felt? I have no words to express myself. Then Jesus told me, "My daughter, for as long as the soul is in my will, so much of divine life can she say she lives on earth. How I like it when I see that the soul enters into my will to live divine life in it. I like very much to see souls who repeat in my will what my humanity did in it. I received communion. I received myself in the will of the Father. And with this I not only repaired everything, but finding immensity and all-seeingness of everything and everyone in the divine will, I embraced all. I gave communion to all. And in seeing that many would not take part in the sacrament, and that the Father was offended, for they did not want to receive my life, I gave to the Father the satisfaction and the glory as if all had received communion, giving to the Father the satisfaction and the glory of a divine life for each one. You, too, receive communion in my will. Repeat what I did, and in this way you will not only repair everything, but will give me to all, as I intended to give myself to all, and will give me the glory as if all had received communion." My heart feels moved in seeing that, unable to give me anything from her own which is worthy of me, the creature takes my things. She makes them her own. She imitates the way I did them, and to please me, she gives them to me. And I, in my delight, keep repeating, "Brava, my daughter, you have done exactly what I did." Then he added, "The acts in my will are the simplest acts, but because they are simple, they communicate themselves to all. The light of the sun, because it is simple, is light of every eye, yet the sun is one. One act alone in my will, like most simple light, diffuses itself in every heart, in every work, in every one, yet the act is one. My very being, because it is most simple, is one single act, but an act which contains everything. It has no feet, but is the step of all, no eyes, but is the eye and the light of all. It gives life to everything, but with no effort, with no toil, yet it gives the act of operating to all. So the soul in my will becomes simple, and together with me she multiplies in all and does good to all. Oh, if all comprehended the immense value of the acts, even the littlest, done in my will, they would let not one act escape them." September 8th, 1927, Volume 22. How all creation is fixed in God and is the relator of the Supreme Being. The sorrow suffered in a divine way in Jesus and in Mary. Meaning of the 40 days in the desert. I continue my flight in the supreme volition that keeps all creation as though in the palm of its hand, and I am forced to hover from one created thing to another, to trace all that glory that I can give to my Creator through them, and to requite him with my love for everything he has done for love of me and of all. Now, while I was doing this, my beloved Jesus moved in my interior and told me, "My daughter, when our divinity created the whole creation, it left it all bound within itself. So it can be said that the heavens keep their relation with God, are fixed in God, and from within God they spread their immensity. The stars are bound in God, and from within God they adorn with gold the vault of the firmament. In God is the sun bound, and from the divine bosom it spreads its light that invests the whole earth. There is not one created thing that does not have its links in God, and while they come out, they do not separate from God. God is jealous of his acts, and he loves them so much that he does not permit that they be separated from him. Therefore, he keeps them all fixed within himself as perennial glory of his own acts, as relators of his being to creatures, that with mute voice speak with facts of he who created them, and tell with facts that he is most pure and endless light, love that is never extinguished, eye that sees everything, hears and penetrates everything. The sun says this. Created things also say, "Look at us, and with facts we will tell you." This is why we do not speak, because facts are greater than words. He is power that can do anything. He is immensity that envelops everything. He is wisdom that orders everything. He is beauty that enraptures everything. The creation is the continuous narration of the Supreme Being, from whom it receives continuous life. And as you go around from one created thing to another, you remain bound through them to your Creator, and you receive the relations of light, of love, of power, and so forth, that each of them possesses. On hearing this, I said, "My love, the created things do not have reason. How can they give me their relations and give you so much glory?" And Jesus added, "My daughter, created things are in relationship with me, and are bound to me, like the members to the head. and they act like members that receive life from the head. See, you have hands and feet. These do not have reason, nor do they speak, but because they receive life from the head, the hands operate, the feet walk, remaining at the disposal of what the head wants, and forming its greatest glory. Only if hands and feet are severed from the body, then would they have neither works nor steps, because they would lose the life that the head communicated to them. So it is with the whole creation. Even though created things have neither reason nor speech, because they are united with God like the members to the body, they receive life from their Creator, and therefore all created things are operating. Their acts are incessant, and are at our disposal more than are your members at the disposal of your head. And just as your hands have the virtue of communicating your works to other creatures, so do created things have the virtue of communicating the good they possess to creatures. And to one who lives in my divine will, because the will that animates them is one with that of this soul, they feel that she belongs to the body of the whole creation, and therefore they communicate to her all the relations that they have with the head, and with great love they bind her to themselves. Therefore be constant in living in my divine will, if you want to live communal life with your Jesus and with all creation, and give me all the glory that all my works give me incessantly. After this, I was following the holy divine volition in the act in which my sweet Jesus separated from the sovereign queen to go into the desert. And while compassionating both one and the other, I thought to myself, how could the sovereign queen separate from her dear son for as many as 40 days? She who loved him so much, how could she endure being without him? I who do not have her love, suffer so much for a few days that he deprives me of himself. What must it have been for my mamma? Now, while I was thinking of this, my adored Jesus moved in my interior and told me, "My daughter, we both suffered in separating from each other, but our sorrow was suffered in a divine way, not in a human way, and therefore it did not separate either from happiness or from imperturbable peace. Happy, I departed for the desert. Happy, the height of my celestial mamma stayed. In fact, the sorrow suffered in a divine way has no virtue of shading even slightly the divine happiness that contains endless seas of joys and of peace. Sorrows suffered in a divine way are like little drops of water in the immense sea, the power of whose waves has the virtue of changing them into happiness. The sorrow suffered in a human way has the virtue of breaking true happiness and of disturbing the peace. The divine way, never. More so since my queen mamma possessed the son of my will by grace, and I possessed it by nature. So the sun remained in her and remained in me, but its rays did not separate, because light is indivisible. Therefore in that same light she remained in me and followed my acts, and I remained in her as her center of life. So the separation, while true, was apparent. In substance, we were fused together and inseparable, because the light of the divine will placed our acts in common, as if they were one alone. And besides, I went to the desert to call back that same divine will of mine, that for 40 centuries creatures had deserted from their midst. And I, for 40 days, wanted to remain alone, to repair for the 40 centuries of human will, during which mine had not possessed its kingdom in the midst of the human family. And with my very divine will, I wanted to call it back again into their midst, so that it might rain. Upon returning from the desert, I deposited it in my mamma, with all those acts of divine will that creatures had rejected and had kept as though in a desert, so that she might be the faithful depository, the repairer, and the empress of the kingdom of my will. Only the sovereign lady could possess this deposit so great, because she possessed within herself the very divine will that could contain the will deserted by creatures. How could we occupy ourselves with our sorrow of being separated for 40 days, when it was about reintegrating, about calling back our divine will to reign in the midst of creatures? In our sorrow we were more than happy, because we wanted to place the kingdom of the supreme Fiat in safety, and the celestial queen was waiting with yearnings for my return, in order to receive the deposit of the new sun, so as to requite with her love all of its acts that the human ingratitude had rejected. She acted as true mamma to my divine will, acting as true mother also for creatures, impetrating for all the life, the happiness, the joy of possessing the kingdom of the eternal Fiat. My daughter, the number of 40 days is symbolic and significant in my life down here. When I was born, for 40 days I wanted to remain in the grotto of Bethlehem, symbol of my divine will that, while being present in the midst of creatures, was as though hidden and outside of the city of their souls. And I, in order to repair for the 40 centuries of human will, wanted to remain outside of the city for 40 days, in a miserable hut, crying, moaning, and praying, to call back my divine will into the city of souls, so as to give it its dominion. And after 40 days, I went out to present myself to the temple, and reveal myself to the holy old Simeon. He was the first city I was calling to the knowledge of my kingdom, and his joy was so great that he closed his eyes to the earth to open them to eternity. 40 days I spent in the desert, and then immediately I did my public life, to give them the remedies and the means in order to reach the kingdom of my will. For 40 days I wanted to remain on earth after my resurrection, to confirm the kingdom of the divine Fiat and its 40 centuries of kingdom that it was to possess. So in everything I did down here, the first act was the restoration of the kingdom. All other things entered into the secondary order, but the first link of connection between me and creatures was the kingdom of my will. Therefore, when it is about my will, I hold nothing back, neither light, nor sacrifices, nor manifestations, nor happiness. They are seas that I release from myself so as to make it known, to make it rain, and to make it loved. September 8th, 1928, Volume 24. Interest of God in one who lives in his divine will. Example of the sun. How everything will be known of the sacrifices that Luisa has made in order to make the divine will known. I was feeling oppressed because of the privation of my beloved Jesus. Oh, how I would have wanted to take a leap into the celestial regions, never to go out of them again, and so end it with these blessed privations of him that make me live dying. Ah, yes, if by his goodness Jesus lets me reach his fatherland, he will no longer be able to hide from me, nor will I ever again be without him, even for one instant. Therefore hurry, my love, let us end it once and for all with these privations of you, for I can take no more. And I felt so embittered that, more than sharp sword, it pierced my poor soul through. Now at that moment, my beloved Jesus came out from within my interior and told me, "My daughter, courage! Don't you know that our interest in one who does my will and lives in it is so great that she is kept by us as our own thing, exclusively ours, inseparable from us? Our divine volition is inseparable from us, and as much as its light spreads, the center of it is always within us, symbolized by the light of the sun, that while expanding and extending over the whole earth, holding it in its own hand of light, never departs from its sphere, nor is the light divided or loses even one drop of light. In fact, light is not separable, and if it could be divided, it would no longer be true light. Therefore the sun can say, 'All the light is mine.' The same for us. The light of our divine will is interminable and inseparable, and it makes the soul in whom it reigns our own and inseparable from us. So since we keep her as our own thing, it is our interest to give honor to ourselves and to invest her so much with all of our divine qualities as to be able to say to all, 'In this creature there is divine life, because the light of our Fiat dominates.' Therefore our interest, that everything in her be holy, pure, beautiful, and that she be invested with our happiness, everything must give of divine will. Just as the earth, when it is invested by the light of the sun, loses darkness and gives completely of light, in such a way that the light acts as queen, and dominating the earth, it makes itself the nourisher of it, communicating to it the life and the effects of the light. In the same way, our divine will, when it reigns in the creature, dispels evils, puts to flight darkness, weaknesses, miseries, afflictions, and as queen, makes itself nourisher of light, of strength, of divine riches, and of happiness. Therefore, for one who lives in our Fiat, bitternesses, oppressions, and everything that gives of human will lose their place, because the light of our Fiat tolerates nothing but what belongs to it. And just as our divine will takes all interest in the creature as something that belongs to it, so does the creature lose all human interests and acquires all divine interests. From this it can be seen whether my divine will reigns, if she no longer feels any interest of her own. And if she does, it means that the soul does not possess all the fullness of my Fiat. There are still little voids empty of its light, and therefore the human makes itself felt, and the soul comes to take on human interests. Therefore, bitternesses, oppressions, out of your soul. These are things that no longer belong to you. To you belongs the light, and everything that the light of my will can possess. After this I was thinking to myself, how many sacrifices are needed for this kingdom of the Fiat? Sacrifice of writing, sacrifice of rest and of sleep, sufferings, incessant prayers, continuous death to the human volition, so that the divine may have perennial life, and many other things that only Jesus knows. And after all this, maybe nothing good will be seen, no glory to God. Therefore so many sacrifices without utility and without effects. But while I was thinking of this, my always lovable Jesus came out from within my interior, and clasping me in his arms told me, "My daughter, what are you saying? There is not one sacrifice you have made that will not have its value, its precious effects, because everything that is done in my will, and to impetrate that it be known, acquires divine life and communicative virtue as its nature, in such a way as to communicate to others the divine life and the virtue it possesses. So much so that everything you have done and suffered is present at this moment before God in impetrative act, to obtain that creatures dispose themselves, and that God concede a good so great. Then when my will becomes known, and its kingdom is accomplished, all the words you have written, the night vigils, your incessant prayers, your rounds upon rounds in the work of creation and redemption, your long years of bed, your pains and sacrifices, will then shine like rays of the sun, like diamonds and precious stones of infinite value, that little by little those who will have the great good of knowing my will and of living in its kingdom will recognize. Even more, they will know that the foundations bejeweled, the factories raised, are cemented with the many sacrifices of the one to whom the mission of making known the kingdom of my will was entrusted. Everything will be known in clear notes, also those who have contributed, who have directed you, who have commanded you to write and have interested themselves with making known, with words or with writings, what regards my divine fiat. And this is nothing. All the good that those who will possess the kingdom of my fiat will do, the glory that they will give me, will descend and ascend again into the ones who have been the origin and the cause of a good so great. And even if you are in heaven, the communicative virtue of my will that has lived life in you on earth will place you in communication. It will keep all the ways open between you and them. So your life and everything you have done and suffered will be in their midst, and everything they will do will have its origin in you, because one is the divine will of one and of the other. And if you knew the glory, the contentments, the delights that will come to you, you would love to sacrifice yourself more, so that my will be known and dominate in the midst of creatures. September 8th, 1929, Volume 26. The birth of the Virgin was the rebirth of all humanity. My poor mind was wandering in the immense sea of the divine fiat, in which everything is in act, as if there were no past and no future, but everything present and everything in act. So whatever thing it wants to find of the works of its creator in the divine will, my little soul finds it as if it were just doing it, in act. And since I was thinking about the birth of my celestial mamma, to give her my poor homages, and I was calling all creation together with me to sing the praises of the sovereign queen, my sweet Jesus told me, "My daughter, I too, together with you and with all creation, want to sing the praises of the birth of the height of my mamma. You must know that this birth enclosed within itself the rebirth of the whole human family, and all creation felt reborn in the birth of the Queen of Heaven. Everything exulted with gladness. They felt happy to have their queen. Up to that moment, they had felt like a people without its queen, and in their muteness, they were waiting for that happy day, in order to break their silence and say, 'Glory, love, honor to she who comes into our midst as our queen. We shall no longer be without defense, without anyone who dominates us, without feast, because she has arisen, who forms our everlasting glory.'" This celestial baby girl, by keeping our divine will intact within her soul, without ever doing her own, reacquired all the rights of Adam innocent before her Creator, and the sovereignty over all creation. Therefore all felt themselves being reborn in her, and we saw in this holy Virgin, in her little heart, all the seeds of the human generations. So through her, humanity reacquired the rights lost, and this is why her birth was the most beautiful, the most glorious birth. From her very birth, she enclosed within her maternal little heart, as though in between two wings, all generations, as children reborn in her virginal heart, so as to warm them, keep them sheltered, and raise them and nourish them with the blood of her maternal heart. This is the reason why this tender celestial mother loves creatures so much, because all are reborn in her, and she feels the life of her children within her heart. What can our divine will not do wherever it reigns and has its life? It encloses everything and everyone, and makes one the provider of good to all. So all feel, under her blue mantle, the maternal wing of their celestial mother, and they find in her maternal heart their little place in which to take cover. Now, my daughter, one who lives in my divine will renews her rebirth and redoubles the rebirths for all human generations. When my supreme will lives inside a heart and lays the fullness of its endless light within it, it centralizes everything and everyone. It does everything. It renews everything. It gives back all that for centuries upon centuries it has not been able to give through the other creatures. So this creature can be called the dawn of the day, the daybreak that calls the sun that gladdens all the earth, illuminates it, warms it, and with its wings of light, more than tender mother, embraces everything, fecundates everything, and with its kiss of light, it gives the most beautiful tints to flowers, the most delicious sweetness to fruits, maturity to all plants. Oh, if my divine will reigned in the midst of creatures, how many prodigies would it not operate in their midst? Therefore be attentive. Everything you do in my divine fiat is a rebirth that you have in it. And to be reborn in it means to be reborn in the divine order, to be reborn in the light, to be reborn in the sanctity, in the love, in the beauty. And in each act of my will, the human will undergoes a death, dying to all evils, and it lives again to all goods. September 8, 1932, Volume 31, Prodigy of the Birth of the Queen of Heaven. Ways of communication between creator and creature. What forms nobility? My little mind is always running inside and outside of the divine volition, and for however much it goes around, I am never tired. I feel a mysterious strength that, enticing me, never says enough to me, but says, run, seek its acts, love them, adore them, kiss them, and transform yours to its, and form all your life of divine will. And if I do not know how to say anything, in my courses and rounds, I tell my little tale. I love you, I love you, I adore you, I bless you, O adorable will, in all your works. And since today is the nativity of the Queen of Heaven, I stop to think about the great portent of her birth, in which it seems heavens and earth were at attention in order to adore this divine prodigy. And my highest good Jesus, with indescribable love and tenderness, told me, blessed daughter of my will, the birth of my celestial mamma encloses all wonders, all prodigies united together. But do you know why? She was not only born pure, holy, beautiful, immaculate. No, but my divine will was born together with this celestial little baby girl. It was already conceived and enclosed in her, in order to form its operating and growing life in the gracious little baby girl. My will enclosed itself in order to be born together with her, to make use of the organ of this celestial creature, in order to operate and form its divine life. This was a prodigy that only the eternal love, the divine wisdom and power could work. It was not only life that was given to her, nor only the gift of being free from original sin. This would have been nothing for our power. What was amazing and called the attention of everyone was my will that was born together with her into the world, so much so that the heavens and earth remained shaken by it, placed themselves at attention, and felt a mysterious strength, that same strength that dominated and conserved the whole of creation. It was our very will that moved everything, and placed itself and the whole of creation at the service and disposition of this newborn baby girl. So this birth of my will together with her was the origin that called all the other prodigies to centralize them in her. Where my fiat reigns, there is no good that it does not enclose, nor prodigy that it does not complete. It wants to display its love and power by forming its operating life, and placing of its own for however much it is possible for a creature to contain. Therefore admire and thank our Supreme Being that arrives at so much love toward this newborn baby girl as to let our unborn will, that has neither beginning nor end, nor limits in its confines, be born in her. So I followed the work of the divine will in all created things, and my lovable Jesus added, "My daughter created things were done by us in order to form many ways so that man could make use of them to come to us. Therefore we left everything open, so that when he wanted to come, he would not need to knock or open in order to come to us. He was our Son. It was just and reasonable that all the ways to go to his celestial Father be held open, and we be with each other in order to love him and be loved, and as Son, to ask for graces and favors. But do you know what this ungrateful Son did? He himself closed the ways. He formed the bars, and by sinning, he formed the doors, closing the correspondence with one who had given him life. Now do you know who returns to open the doors, to burn the bars? One who loves me and lives in my divine will. Love and my fiat are powerful forces that burn and empty everything, and they open all the ways to place the distant Son again in the arms of the Celestial Father. Now you must know that all the virtues, the good works, the love, and doing my divine will, form the nobility of man. But the substance of this nobility is the wealth of my grace. All good becomes leaned on it, which becomes the font and conservator of all the good that he can do. Otherwise one can say that man is noble by origin, but since he lacks the wealth, he finds himself almost by necessity doing acts not worthy of his nobility. Indeed, if one is noble and is not rich, he cannot dress nobly or live in palaces. In this way his nobility is reduced to only the memory that he was noble. So in the one who does not possess the wealth of my grace, all good is reduced to squalid virtue, that very often makes seen that he is not rich with patience, with prayer, with charity, and so forth. Now, good forms nobility. The wealth of my grace conserves it. My will forms the king who dominates, and with divine mastery rules and orders all. End of September 8th. Fiat.